IALTA, the company dedicated to building knowledge and setting the standards in the technical sector of aviation leasing. Welcome to our free certificate course on the Introduction to Aircraft Technical Records. This is video number 9 in our series of 11 videos introducing you to aircraft technical records. The aim of this video is to introduce you to the engines and landing gear technical records review at the end of lease. When we look at the review of an aircraft engine, it is best to consider the engine as a standalone asset, and this is mainly due to the significant costs involved. For a wide-body aircraft like an Airbus A350 or Boeing 787, an engine could cost in excess of $30 million, and remember, there are 2 of them on the most common aircraft types. A typical narrow-body engine for a Boeing 737NG or Airbus A320 can cost in excess of $20 million. What you might find interesting is that an engine has to be removed from the aircraft after a certain number of hours and cycles and sent for a shop visit, or SV. The overhaul in the engine shop can take up to 4 months, and the cost for a shop visit with full LLP replacement is in the region of $6 million. In order for the airline to keep the aircraft operational, it will often have to lease another engine. Some common engine manufacturers include General Electric, Rolls-Royce, Pratt & Whitney, CFM International, and International Aero Engines. All engine technical records will identify the make and model of the engine. For example, CFM 56-5B, and more importantly, will reference the unique engine serial number, or ESN. Part of your role as the technical records consultant will be to review the engines, APU, and landing gear records from the redelivery airline. The high-level process involves extracting and becoming familiar with the relevant technical return conditions from the lease agreement. The starting point of the engines and landing gear review is when you receive the certified status list from the returning airline. Reviewing the technical records to ensure that all documents are present. Some additional technical documents associated with an engine review at the end of lease would include the shop visit reports, the test cell report after the overhaul, engine boroscope reports, engine hours and cycle statement, engine trend data, and incident clearance statements, or ICS. Any issues or missing records are captured on the oil and communicated with all stakeholders. We must also consider the engine's operating environment, as this greatly affects the performance and condition of the overall engine performance. An aircraft taking off from the UK in temperatures of 20 degrees Celsius will not have to work as hard as an engine taking off from Dubai in 40 degrees Celsius. The harsh environment operation means that the engine has to work harder and the internal wear on the engine parts is a lot greater. As well as the shop visits, it is important to highlight that the engine will also require maintenance checks to be performed during operations by the airline, and these tasks can be reviewed on the last done, next due, or LDND, that we discussed in video 7. Engines will also have their own airworthiness directives and service bulletins, ADs and SBs, modifications and components also to be reviewed at the end of lease review. For each line item on the certified status list for engines, we are checking for the dirty fingerprint, or DFP, of the certifier that performed the task and on what date. We are also checking for any associated paperwork arising from a defect and covered on a non-routine card, or NRC. In Video 8, we discussed life-limited parts, LLPs. The most extensive part of an engine technical records review is on life-limited parts. The engines contain multiple LLPs. These are parts that have a defined life that is measured in flight hours or flight cycles and must be replaced before the defined limit expires. When an LLP reaches its life limit, it must be removed and destroyed as it cannot be used further. The replacement of LLPs takes place during a shop visit overhaul. The engine disk sheet lists the life limit parts from the various sections of the engine: the fan, the compressor, the low pressure turbine or LPT, and the high pressure turbine, HPT. Our review of the disk sheet is to determine the LLP serviceability and remaining life. We can compare this data to the technical return conditions on the lease contract. Aircraft engine green time is a term used to refer to the amount of time the engine has remaining before its next major overhaul. Once the overhaul is completed, the engine is considered to be at zero time. Back to berth trace is a term used in the review of engines and landing gear technical records to describe the complete history of the engine from the date it was manufactured until its current status. This trace includes all the maintenance and repairs performed on the engine or landing gear throughout its life, as well as any removals, replacements, and inspections. The landing gear is another complex area to review because the entire landing gear assembly has its own maintenance requirements as defined by the manufacturer and commonly contains some life-limited parts, or LLPs. Like engines, landing gear must be removed for shop visits, and often airlines will use serviceable exchange gears to meet the technical return conditions when handing the aircraft back to the lessor. The cost of a narrow-body landing gear can cost up to $2 million and between $400,000 to $500,000 to overhaul. Prior to a gear going to the overhaul shop, the rotable parts are removed, such as wheels and brakes. Similar to engines, the landing gear will have its own related ADs, SBs, and modifications. The landing gear's list of LLPs appears on the Airline Certified Landing Gear Status Sheet. As you can see, the landing gear LLPs are driven by aircraft cycles and time, or date. Typical landing gear return conditions could have a minimum of 4,500 cycles or 24 months, whichever is the limiting factor, of life remaining to the next expected removal for overhaul. Congratulations on completing this introduction video on engine and landing gear technical records. In the next video, we will discuss the technical records associated with aircraft structures. Have you registered for the course on our website? You will need to do this in order to complete the multiple choice questions associated with each video to achieve your certificate.